And we are live. Very good evening. My name is Garabo Dynamite Nyalungu. I call myself the leadership that led the leader to the leading lead, the very first female chairperson of Yale Village 2021. I would like to welcome all of you Yale Villagers, both from RES and at home currently, former Yale Villagers, Edge Conquerors, as well as Wits Junction residents, and all cross watchers across all the houses that in ARC. Thank you so much for dedicating your time into watching this also important conversation. Please note that it will be recorded and will be saved on our Instagram IGTV, so feel free to come in and out as you please. The mandate of the day is quite clear. We are in collaboration with Wits Junction residents, and we will be having a leadership conversation with their with their chairperson and SRC Treasurer General, and that is Kanakana Mudzanani, who will be joining us shortly. My first year group, that is the 2019 intake group of first years, the current first years with the last experience of WITS under normal circumstances as first years. So those are current people who are in house committee, and it is so important that because of that experience, they lay down the foundation for the next house committees to come. For us, we've had to refer to house committees from back then, and as a leader, that makes you think about the next house committees to come. Where will they get that reference? So it's so important that we also lay down that foundation. This has never been done before, at least not on Yale Village platforms, but circumstances like these, COVID-19, the pandemic, urge one to come up with very strategic and creative ways in which we can lead under these very, very hectic circumstances. As I wait for Kanakana, feel free to interact with us on the comment section. Your comment, have your say into the conversation. I believe he will be joining us shortly. I've just accepted his request. So yes, we'd like to hear from you. Hi, Kanakana, how are you?
Hi, good evening, Chair. I am very thankful that you have taken this bold decision to invite me to your inaugural chair-to-chair conversation. I believe that our houses share quite a lot in terms of heritage, in terms of culture, and I totally believe that through this engagement, we are going to have a progressive discussion today.
I have to agree with you there. There is, in fact, a narrative that when you're from Yale Village, the only way to go is Junction. You can't go anywhere else. You have to go to Junction after Yale Village. I believe also this will be very progressive. Thank you so much for dedicating your time to have this conversation with us. However, we are norm breakers. We are barrier pushers. So we are not going to have this the traditional way. I believe you would like to first outline and give us foundation and a point of direction. Let me give you your 2 minutes.
Well, I mean, this is your platform, but thank you for allowing me that opportunity. I think what is important is that I introduce myself a bit. My name is Kanakana Mudzanani. I currently serve as the House Chair of Wits Junction. I also have the opportunity of serving as the SRC Treasurer General at Wits University. I think it is also important to emphasize the fact that I believe that I am a student activist. I am genuinely in the front line, ensuring that I fight for students' demands and their needs. And I would want to believe that I'm constantly in the center of fighting for those who come from poor backgrounds, so as to ensure that we build an equitable and a just world for all. But again, Chair, I hope that through this platform, we are going to award those who are viewing and obviously those who are listening the opportunity to understand that when you serve as a house chair or when you serve at a house com structure, you have a bigger role because your role is to initiate, particularly first years, on the culture of rest life, on the culture of the university as well, because in residencies, it's not just an area where people stay, but it's an area where dreams are actually crafted, they're constructed, and they're manufactured as well. And again, for those who are people of Mjolo, they would understand that in residences, it's where we build families, it's where we make great networks, and it's also, you know, a great platform for interaction and social cohesion as well. And just to add to that, I think it's important to emphasize that Facebook, I'm sure we are all aware of the platform, was developed at a Harvard residence called Kirkland House by a group of friends who had met at that residence. So we have a crucial role in ensuring that indeed such things take place in our residences. Thank you so much, Chair.
Thank you so much. I think I'm going to like how this is going to go. Thank you so much for putting that out. You mentioned that you are in the front line, and I'm very interested to know because now there's a narrative that goes that says now at the Kanakana, can you still hear me?
I can hear you. I don't know if it was my Wi-Fi, but I missed you a bit.
All right. I was saying that currently you are the face of over 30K students, that is in your capacity as SRC. And I beg to differ with that statement a bit because when you are in such a position for an institution like WITS, it's more than just the registered student, the 30K that you see on the system. It's also alumni, it's also people who have been at WITS and somehow were associated with it. And I say this because earlier in the year, we had our president trending for being quoted out of context. And senior students, graduates of WITS University will give you the platform to explain yourself. So does that come with pressure? I'd like to assume it does come with pressure, but I'd like to know from your point, is it the pressure to bring your best or somehow it does pose a mental health threat to you?
I think we are labeled student leaders for a reason, and I think maybe society is a bit harsh on student leaders because I think there has been an image that has been crafted that student leaders are already matured. But I think what people need to understand is the fact that we are still in the process of growing as well. We are quite young. We must be awarded the opportunity to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. So what we eventually saw was, a series of criticism that was directed to our SRC president for the sentiments he had shared at the time. But I think what was profound was the fact that he took it upon himself to say, I have the responsibility to reflect. I have the responsibility to learn from those who have better knowledge. And if I have indeed erred, I must then go back to the drawing board and say, how do I fix this? So I think it's always important to emphasize that student leaders, either in a student council, either in a house committee, or in the SRC itself, we are still in the process of learning. We are still rough diamonds. These are avenues meant to craft and shape us. And only when we are finished products, we can then be called leaders of society, and people are more than welcome to not be patient with us. But I think at this stage, people must be patient with us. We are called student leaders because we are also in the process of learning.
Thank you so much for that. Earlier in the year also, the SRC had a campaign, hashtag 21 million for 2021. How far are you with that? What's the target? Are we already, have we reached the target? Where are we there? Indulge us a bit.
I think it is important to emphasize, and obviously if you had watched the press briefing where we launched the campaign, we did make it clear that the goal of this campaign, as much as it's about raising money, it's not primarily to raise money, but it's to actually conscientize society and remind them that that which we were promised, which is ultimately free higher education, has not been achieved at all. And we were reminding society that both stakeholders, the private sector, the public sector, civil society at large, and students themselves must play a role in ensuring that free higher education as a whole is something that is a reality, because it is only through education that you're going to be able to address the question of poverty, that you're going to be able to address the question of inequality, that you're going to be able to address any form of social injustice that is prevalent, at least in democratic South Africa. But to best answer your question, I wish to put it before all of you that through the efforts of the SRC and obviously the efforts of the university, the public and the private sector, we have managed today to raise just under 6.5 million. And we are by far the only council in the country that has been able to ensure that over 88% of students who are at the risk of financial exclusion are returned to the university without paying a cent.
Progressive. Last week was what was supposed to be a virtual graduation, rather. It was. I'm not happy. I'm not a graduate, but I am not happy. I have people who are graduates in our residence, and I really think they deserved their moment to walk through the Great Wall stage. But one person was offered that moment, and I am very curious to know, are we all equal, or are there other people who are more equal than others? I know the SRC has condemned that, but I want to know the thoughts behind that, because on a normal circumstance would be ushered by comrades of men's race, and as well as many other races, but men's race would dominate. But I feel like every other graduate deserved that moment. But indulge me, your thoughts on that, the virtual graduation that happened last week.
No, I totally agree that everyone who has worked tirelessly to attain that Q or that qualification from VETS deserves the opportunity or the privilege to walk towards the Great Hall, because that is eventually the end goal. But what we eventually saw in the past 2 weeks was quite disturbing. And that is why, as the SRC, we had to intervene and condemn the university from its act, because we totally believe that we must all be awarded an equal opportunity to walk through that Great Hall. But Miss South Africa was the only student who was granted that privilege. And the university, through the act that we condemn as the SRC, was reinforcing the words that we were obviously told by George Orwell to say, some animals, although we may appear to be equal, some animals are more equal than others, which is why we saw it fit to condemn the university, remind them that all students are paying fees. No one must be awarded a privilege over another student, particularly if they all contributed to working hard towards attaining that degree. But I think it is also important to emphasize that our fight as the SRC is with the university and is not entirely with the black woman in the name of Miss South Africa who was invited by the establishment. So we believe that the injustice was perpetuated and brought up by the university, and our fight and our energy must be redirected to the university and not necessarily Miss South Africa.
I wanna ask then, if you were in her position as the leader, what would you have done differently? I think for me, the problem was with her wearing the attire. It now changed the whole thing. It was an interview, yes, but the attire kind of gave me a cringe-worthy moment. If you were in that position, being invited, wouldn't you have taken advantage of the moment?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I would have understood that the country as it stands is operating under a different mode, a mode which has unfortunately affected almost each and every single student at Wits University. And that means people are denied of the privilege of walking towards the Great Hall. I would raise a red flag to the university to say, why am I being awarded this special privilege? How does it help? And in fact, what separates me from any other student who worked tirelessly for their degree? If the university wanted to at least confer a degree to me, I would have advised them to do so online with the other students who had worked tirelessly hard, so as to ensure that I reinforce the notion that leaders and public figures are not above anyone else, are not above the regulations, and are not above society. But however, they've been awarded a privilege to steer society towards a normative world. And the normative world is one which perpetuates equality. So if I was in a position, fortunately or unfortunately, I would have denied the offer simply because the Universities Act was one which sought to perpetuate inequality, and I would have been against it.
Right, thank you. Moving from that, every year we have protests at WITS for different reasons, right? And I would like to understand how you would answer to a student who says, normally the student leaders who are politically affiliated have personal agendas into these protests, because you'll see them there with their regalia. So for perhaps like Kanakana who's studying politics and is under SASCO, they would have the guts to go and fight the police and fight the system and be there on camera and not have worries, because somehow some of their dreams is to make it into parliament, and them being there kind of provides, or rather solidifies, their CV to be in parliament, to say I was there and this is proof. But what about the engineer, the chartered accountant, who thinks, no, these ones have agendas, they want to progress, they want to be in parliament. We are seeing it now. You've got your Naledi Chirwas there, your Vuyani Pambos, and then there's Bomcebo Dlamini who cannot practice now. You understand? So how would you respond to a student who's like that, who are saying, if this is a genuine cause, why then are you wearing your political regalias to these protests?
I think it is of paramount importance to firstly understand that student leaders are the most selfless individuals across campus. And I say this because if we are to have, for instance, a fees protest, I want you to be aware of the fact that these are people that are already in the system. These are people that, as it stands, they are able to afford to stay at a university residence. They are living a comfortable life. but they then turn around and say there is an injustice which is happening. Someone who is not afforded the same privilege that I have is being financially ostracized by the university on the basis that they come from a poor background. I, as someone who has dreams, as someone who's already in the system, I am going to let go of my privilege and take it upon myself to fight for that student. It takes an act of selflessness that is beyond anyone's imagination to be such a soldier. But I totally understand that in some instances, there were those who were rewarded with political positions and there were those who were deployed to parliament. I do not want us to problematize such things, simply because we need to understand that as society, right, we've got the responsibility to elect those who have the most genuine intentions in them. And if we are aware that there is someone who has been arrested fighting for a cause that they genuinely believe is right, when it was unfashionable to do so, and a generation comes in agreement to say that figure A and figure B are the most appropriate people to lead us and we would want to send them in parliament, simply because they have our interests at heart, through a democratic system, I do not want us to problematize such an act. What I would, however, want to problematize is people who are in power as it stands, using their power to identify someone who has genuine intentions to change someone's life and say, for the sake of getting votes, I think we should get this person because they are the popular amongst their group. I think that is what we must problematize. But we must never at any point problematize individuals who have the best intentions of their group to be deployed into positions of leadership. I do not want us to problematize such at all. But again, the act of protesting in political regalia is one which is quite questionable. And some of us hold very strong views against such acts. We've always been of the view that if we are to conduct a student protest, we must be able to put our political badges aside and confront the establishment without the intention of being recognized as either SASCO or Student Command or DA, because when the system ostracizes you, when you are financially excluded, the establishment does not care which political party you come from. But there is again a popular view from those who are in the space to say, we do not have the intention of defending ANC leaders, but we have the intention of defending an ANC policy which is free higher education. So we must wear the ANC regalia as a way of reiterating the fact that this is an ANC policy or this is an EFF policy and we are in agreement with it. And because we are in agreement with that policy, we are not going to be afraid to state it that we are aligned to such parties. So I guess it's an ideological debate which is very fertile, which we must continue to have. But again, I do not want us to problematize the issue of when we agree amongst ourselves as young people that A, B, and C are capable of leading a transformative agenda for us as a generation and they must therefore lead us, I do not want us to problematize such acts. But I guess that's a very good question.
You mentioned that we should problematize the willingness of student leaders to come into the party when perhaps someone from the mother body offers them X, Y, Z. But also, let us talk realistically. When someone from the mother body offers me X, Y, Z, I don't have it at home. First of all, it could improve the standard of living at home. It may put food on the table at home. If you're offering me a car, I've never had a car, and this is you offering me that. So now speak to the human in that person. Perhaps not the leader, the human in that person who has to think about whatever that's being offered, how could it improve their standards of living? Now, how would you then respond to that? If someone in the mother body offers me something that is going to progress my family, whether or not I like it, do I still need to take the students' problems into account when such an offer is given?
I think we've crafted a toxic space, particularly as South Africans, because it seems as if we are all against corruption when we are not benefiting from it. And I think that is a very, very dangerous act, right? So if you are going to allow your own personal aspirations to come above the aspirations of us as a people, we are not going to be able to transform the society as a whole. If you are going to sacrifice your privilege, if you're going to sacrifice your academics, if you're going to sacrifice your mental health to go and protest, and just when you are at the edge of achieving free higher education, someone calls you and says, I am aware of the fact that you don't have A, B, and C at home, and I would want to provide it for you in the event that you sell out this. And you agree to that. I want you to be aware of the fact that you are complicit to an agenda that seeks to reverse the gains of any transformative agenda. I want it to be known that such an act is an act that is holding us back as society. So we need to imagine a society where we have leaders who understand that sometimes it's not about them, who understand that sometimes it's not about your dreams. Sometimes it's about crafting a just world, a world that is socially responsible and socially conscious of its environment. So if we don't get rid of such things, we are not going to be able to change society, because even the white establishment that we are constantly fighting, it is very much aware of the fact that, okay, if there is a certain, for instance, Julius Malema, who projects himself to be for the blacks, if I can identify this person and I'm able to satisfy whatever it is that they need personally, then I can be rest assured that black people won't be able to get whatever it is that they want. That on its own will never give us a good society. So we need to sit down as a generation and agree that we want to achieve A, B, C, and D. And once we've agreed that that is what we want to achieve, and we are not are going to allow anyone to deter us, we're not going to allow ourselves to be bought, then we can be rest assured that's when we are going to build a just world.
Thank you. Moving from
so what I am basically trying to say is that as people, let's distance ourselves from fighting corruption simply because we are not benefiting from it. But let us fight corruption because we know of the detriment, of the damage, of the harm that comes with corruption.
All right, we are at residences and we have first years who still have the prospectus version of this space. You know both the prospectus version and reality. So I want you to help us envision what leadership is in this space and how far is it from what the prospectus tells us. What does it mean to be a student leader in this space? Because we all have so many definitions of leadership. You know, we've read books that tell us leadership is the ability to influence. Perhaps that is the narrative that a first year holds. But you've been here. You know how it feels to be here. You've been excluded. You've been expelled. You've been suspended. You've heard the reality of this space. What does it mean to be a student leader here?
Okay, before I speak to what a student leader means, I just want to say to any first year who's possibly watching this that there are fundamental changes that you've witnessed just by virtue of you being in the space. It could be that the marks that you were used to getting in high school are not reflective of your marks at the moment. It could be that, you know, for the first time in your life, you just came across a white person here at Wits University. It could be as well that you are now expected to pay for the first time in your life 80,000 rand just to study at Wits University. Yet your parents have never seen that amount of money. Yet the house that you stay in at home is not even worth that much. Or it could be that you are of a privileged race and you are paying way less than that which you used to pay in high school. Your marks as it stands are no different from the marks you were attaining at high school. As it stands, you are basically in the limelight and you are in the right direction towards you know, building a better life for yourself. There are two groups who are faced with two totally different conditions. One has a tremendous job of catching up in order for them to fit in. One already belongs to the space. And I just want to say, we all belong here. It does not matter where you come from. If you come from rural Thohoyandou, you are here because you deserve to be here. But the space as it stands is not comfortable for you. The space as it stands does not make you feel like you belong here. And you, unfortunately, as much as you feel like you are young, as much as you feel like you are not ready, you unfortunately have the responsibility to make this space comfortable. Not for yourself, but for your younger brother who may have the same privilege of coming to Wits University. I always say that in 1995, Advocate Moses Kanakana led a huge protest against financial exclusion. In 2005, Floyd Shibambu leads the same protest. In 2009, Mbali Shope leads the same protest. In 2018, Sisanda Mbolekwa leads a similar hunger strike. In 2021, Mpendulo Mfeka leads the same strike. We've witnessed over 26 years of a protest that is fighting for one thing, yet we have not imagined a solution to this problem. It cannot be. We are surely not doing our part as activists, as students, to make sure that the space is comfortable, firstly, for us who are in the system and for those who are going to come after us. I would want to use the popular phrase of saying, we are not angry enough. I would want to use Frantz Fanon's words, who says that those who have an element of madness are those who react in a normal way in an abnormal situation. The situation at Wits is extremely abnormal. The levels of inequality are shocking. Poor people cannot exist freely in this space, yet we are on a daily basis acting in a normal way. We surely need to be mad because we are not aware of what is happening. So for as long as you recognize the fact that there is an injustice, there is something wrong, there is something that reminds me every day that I do not belong to this space, you ought to take it upon yourself to say, I am going to lead, I am going to take the responsibility of changing this space. And that is when we are going to understand amongst all of us that the responsibility to change Wits University does not lie with Karabo. The responsibility to change Wits University does not lie with Mpendulo alone or with Kanakana alone, but it lies with all of us. We need to be united in confronting the injustices we are faced with. And this goes as well to the larger plea of women. If we agree that our residencies are not safe, are not convenient spaces for our women, why is it that we are not taking active action against such injustices? So I will say in closing to this statement, Karabo, that we need to understand that silence in the presence of any form of injustice is itself an injustice. Not to speak is to speak, and not to act is to act. We can't afford to be silent in the presence of any injustice.
Please bear with me. I'm not sure what happened to my speaker, but all of a sudden you just went low. I think you're too powerful for the kind of phone that I'm using. I wanted you to engage me on the qualifications required, the requirement rather, for one to be in SRC and in House Committee, which is currently, I think, 60%. Why are my marks being judged? Why am I being judged? Why do my marks somehow to the system reflect my leadership potential? Your thoughts on that?
I think we've got to understand the fact that we are student leaders. That is primary. We are student leaders, and never at any point in Karabo, I don't know if we are still together.
We are together. There's someone trying to call me, and yes. But yes, you can continue.
I am saying it is imperative to understand that we are leading students. And I unfortunately hold the view that as a student leader, you ought to lead by example. You have to be at the forefront of chanting and passing. You have to make sure that you are above the metric of ANC leaders. I mean, every day we are constantly complaining on Twitter that the kind of leaders that we have in society do not have the intellectual depth to comprehend the problems we face on a daily basis with the complexity they deserve. So if we are leading students in such a space, we unfortunately have to be passing students ourselves. So I am of the view that indeed you must at least have 60%. You ought to demonstrate academic capacity before you can step up and lead. Because there was a year, which I do not wish to disclose, where there was an SRC when over 50% of it was academically excluded. So if you have 50% of your SRC academically excluded by the university, that basically means you don't have a structure called the SRC. You'll now have students who need the assistance of the SRC not getting any help because their leaders have been academically excluded. So we need to make sure that amongst ourselves, we select the best leaders who understand our problems, who understand their academics, and that is when we can say the leaders we've elected are capable of leading our transformative idea.
I remember meeting you at the House Committee induction, and we were jokingly talking about the fact that you were two blazers, casually. The SRC one and for one for Wits Junction. Where do you get the time, and how do you respond to people who assume that student leaders somehow have their degrees easier than others? Because I remember in one house meeting here, in one meeting, general house meeting at Yale Village, someone said that the reason why we haven't been chosen, we haven't been continuing with our sectors, I think it was in the previous years, is because other houses are ahead, and that is because they are BA students. So assuming that because they've got more time, then they were able to do that. How do you respond to people who assume student leaders have degrees that are somehow easier than others?
I think, honestly speaking, there is a sense of undermining towards the humanities, and I do not think it's justified at all. And I wish to put it on record that student leaders themselves have the capacity to multitask. We are able to study, focus on our books. We are able to understand that students need to be assisted in certain ways. And we are also able to have friends. We are also able to have girlfriends. And we are just basically trying to make sure that there is a balance in our life. And we encourage every other student to ensure that they just don't excel in one sphere of life, but they excel in all spheres of life, you know? And if you would recall, you would understand that our president, who currently serves in the SRC, is a 3-time graduate of this university. Oh, yes, yes.
Struggled to hear
you. I was still saying, Karabo, that if you would, yeah, if you would recall, our current SRC president, as it stands, he has completed his Bachelor of Arts in Law. He has completed with flying colors his postgraduate LLB. He is at the moment, he's just left with one module and he's done with his LLM. He's doing his master's in law. If you go as far as interrogating how difficult it is, you are actually going to realize that most of the student leaders that are leading as it stands are intellectually equipped way more than people who are in faculties that they would want to arguably believe that they're extremely difficult. So there must never be an idea that student leaders have enough time, and because they have enough time, they are obviously able to jungle. We are just of the view that we must have a balanced social life, and we try by all means to keep up to that.
When you talk about Sheikh Mfeka, you forgot to mention that he's a former Yale villager. So, yes, bragging rights for days. Having to lead in a mixed gendered race, how difficult is it? What are some of the things that you have to go through as a chairperson that perhaps someone from Nokendo or Jubilee would not go through? What are some of the problems that you face?
I think the toughest challenge that we are faced with is understanding the fact that here we are dealing with a real microcosm of society. The same problems that society faces are particularly the same problems we are faced with at race. Here you are going to have issues pertaining to gender-based violence, which you must obviously have the emotional intelligence to deal with. You are going to be confronted with issues of sexism, which you must be able to deal with. You are going to be faced with issues of homophobia, which you are expected to be able to deal with. So it is not quite easy, but you've got to be able to understand that you have the responsibility as a leader to ensure that you build a house which is aligned to the aspirations of our country, which is obviously to build a non-sexist. And by the way, I also happen to lead a cosmopolitan residence where you have Black and white and Indian. So you also need to understand that you are aspiring to build a society which is non-sexist, which is non-racial, which is non-discriminatory in any other way. And that is not an easy job. It is not an easy job. And I've had to deal in my term of office with a case where a member of my own house committee was implicated in a matter of discrimination. And we had to take a very, very bold decision to say, because of what we aspire to build as a country, we do not think you have the capacity as it stands to be part of this committee because your views do not align with our aspirations. So we think you have to go back, modify your views, learn, and only when you understand what we are trying to build, you will be capable to lead again.
Each year we welcome a much younger generation of first years in residences, and this year we have AMA 2000. And yeah, I remember when we had the Yale Village Cultural Restoration Seminar, some of the things that arise there was the fact that Yale is very radical, revolutionary. We produce SRC leaders. I mean, you can see. But the problem is, I look at the current generation of first years and I'm like, I see Jurex, I see screws. I see, no offense to anyone, but as a chairperson, then how then do you make everyone be an activist in their own right? Because not everyone will be as passionate as a Sheikh Mfeka. Not everyone has aspirations of being in the SRC. So how has that the welcoming of new generations, a younger generation of first years altered, particularly week and the rest of how you conduct the house, the rest of how you, the rest, islungu bakithi, the tradition of the house, the tradition of the house, yes.
I think leaders, firstly, they have to be accessible. Leaders have to be on the ground. They need to understand the constituency that they are leading. And unfortunately, we have to understand that we are not leading ourselves. And the struggle does not remain the same. If I go and engage a first year today, the problems that they are going to tell me may not be the problems that someone who was here in 2017 faced. Their interests are also not the same as well, which is why if you are hosting a freshers party, you can't be hell-bent on inviting a Yuma Sikela when there is a Uncle Bini of some sort. So you have to understand that a group that you are leading has its own interest, has its own problems, and has its own views on society. And you've got to constantly engage these people, understand them, understand what they want, understand what they need, and only then are you going to ensure that you give them that which is of interest to them. So I always say each one of us have an activism in ourselves, which is why you can only tolerate up to so much. So if you go to someone and you say, what do you think is problematic at this instance? They're going to tell you that no, for instance, if you engage a white constituency here, and this is a very unpopular view, they're going to tell you that we do not understand why residences don't have bars. Every time when we want to drink, we must go drink somewhere where we are not safe. If you go and you engage someone who is of my race and you ask them what are their issues, they're obviously going to tell you that I do not understand why, as it stands, we are expected to pay expensive costs like this, like this, like this. Then as a leader, you now have the responsibility to say, no, man, Mchana, you know what? I was of the view that we must also have a bar here at Junction. What is your take? Then someone who's obviously inclined to that idea will say, no, I'm not entirely against that view. I'm in support of it. Then you go to your white constituency and you say, hey, folks, as much as you are interested in having a bar here, there's a serious problem that we are facing. Your own black friends here, the ones that you are constantly engaging on a daily basis, they can't afford to stay here because this place is similarly expensive and they can't afford it. So you need to understand that we are going to be protesting and we would want you to join. And you are now going to actually understand that these racial tensions that exist outside of the country, we can be able to fix them if we actually understand that these two groups, as much as they do not have similar interests, they are all willing to make sure that they unite in ensuring that they build a just world, which is comfortable for both of them. Because it is, as it stands, it's not even comfortable for any. And I say this with knowing very well that Junction was, by the way, at the forefront of bringing white numbers to our protest. There's a picture which I will share at this group, at this timeline, and you're going to see that the first day of our protest, the majority of the people that were in that protest were largely white. And that is because we had familiarized them with the problems that most black for them.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. I was saying we conscientized the white group to say, comrades, if we do not address this issue of financial exclusion, We are going to have a perpetual act of racial tensions in our residencies simply because you guys do not want to support your brothers in your struggle, whom tomorrow you will want to interact with. It does not make sense. You must use your privilege because you are white to come and support these people. And that is how we are going to defeat the system. Because whether we like it or not, and this is something that we need to change, vets tends to have a problem of listening to us when complaints are being raised by white people. If white people in a group chat of a medicine class come together and say, we do not want to write this exam next week because there's a Rugby World Cup final that is playing and we want to be focused on it, vets tends to listen. But if me and you, as black as we are, we say we do not think that it is necessary for us to come to class because there is a protest around fees, vets does not want to listen. So we ought to say, guys, we've studied the establishment. It seems though this establishment listens to white people. Let's go win them over. Let's tell them that they need to support us, because in the event that they do not support us, problem A, B, and C are not going to be solved, and we are not going to be happy. And when we are unhappy, racial tensions are going to be prevalent.
You said a mouthful there. Back to House Committee. Sorry about that. We come into House Committee, we have different views, we have different backgrounds as well, we share different sentiments on things. How important is it for a House Com to present a united front, especially to the House?
SRC, a National Executive Committee of the ANC, House Committee, you're always going to have people who have egos. That is very true. But I think although student leaders have egos, I think we must ensure that no matter how big our egos are, we must never at any point forget who we are there to represent. We are there to represent students. I must never allow my ego to stand in the way of Junction hosting a freshers party. I must never allow those things to be prevalent. So yes, Karawa and myself can have a personal fight, but when we come in a House Committee meeting, we must understand that it's not about us, but it's about the people we are leading with. And
True.
Which is why today, even if you look at maybe an organization such as the ANC or the EFF, you're going to realize that no, man, actually, most of these fights that are happening here are not about the people that are supposed to be led, but they're simply existing because the leaders who have been elected are forgetting who they're supposed to lead. They're making this about themselves, but not about the people that elected them into office. So all Housecom leaders, all student activists who have the intention of changing society as a whole must understand that the day you are elected into office, it's not about you. Some of us have had to, surrender our rooms to students who didn't have places to sleep. Some of us had instances where we possibly cancel dates with our families or with our partners or whatever it is, simply because we had a burning issue to attend to. We've had to not watch a soccer game because there was a protest. Some of us were even suspended from studying at VETS simply because we believed that it was not about us. So the day you take the responsibility to lead, you must have an understanding that it is not about you.
Can I just send a shout out to your partner? It's the third time you mentioned Jolo related things. I think she's making you extremely happy. We like it. We like it when our TG is when our TG is happy. Now, as a chairperson, what are some of the things that you have done to perhaps try and nurture some bonds within the House Committee? Which ones have worked and which ones have not? I remember with us, we've had to have something that we call a shower, where we try to bond together. We play games, trying to expose each other's strengths and weaknesses so that we have solid team dynamics. In your side, what have you done? What are some of the things that you've done?
I think as chairperson of the House, I've just made sure that I must never be involved in any personal squabble with anyone. And I must always be bigger than all my House Committee members, because they are bound to have disagreeing views, passionately disagreeing views. And when they have such a disagreement, I must go to each one of them and say, look, I understand you are fighting with A, B, and C, and I do not think that this is a squabble that is beyond our control. Let's be able to manage it. Let's try and resolve it. At the end of the day, it's in your best interest to not fight with this person. So let's try by all means to make sure that we resolve it. So once you go to someone, already you are willing to listen to them. Already you have not adopted a position that is either for them or against them. you can be rest assured that you're going to be able to resolve any conflict that arises in your house. But if you are going to go with the spirit that you are big, if you are going to go with the spirit that you must be listened to because you are the chair, you are not going to keep your house in order or your house intact. It's not about egos. And as the house chairperson, you must always be willing to be the sacrifice, no matter what. Because when everyone is happy, you're going to have a functional house. But if you make it about you, if you make it about your way, you can be rest assured that it is not going to work in your favor.
You've mentioned that you've encountered suspension from the institution, and those are some of the things that perhaps scare students to be part of protests, to be part of the masses that call for change within the institution. When that happens, what do your family say? Because they sent you to study. What do they say? They pay fees, some of them. So when they see you on television and next thing you've got a suspension, you are not going, you are not there, you are not doing what they sent you to do. What do they say, and or how do you respond?
I think my greatest mistake was that in the midst of the protest, you know, I hardly charged my phone, and that meant that I was unreachable. So at the height of, you would know that we lost a soul in the midst of our protest. At the height of it all, somebody died, people were getting shot. And as a parent, you are trying to call your son because you've just heard that somebody passed away and the name is not being disclosed and you can't reach your son. It becomes a very problematic issue. And because I was not on my phone, when I was suspended personally, I heard it from the cluster manager as I was on my way to the interview. He said, "You've been suspended, but I'll tell you all about it when you come back from your interview." So when I get to the interview, I then make the greatest mistake of announcing that I have been suspended. And my parents were watching TV. And it was quite problematic because they learned about my suspension on national TV like any other one and any other person. And what struck them was the fact that they sent me to school, they pay for my fees, they look after me. Now that I've been suspended, they must carry the burden, but they must be the last people to know. So my old man literally drove that Friday and drove to Johannesburg. First thing I had to do on Saturday morning was to go out with him for lunch, and I had to explain why exactly was I suspended, what was I doing, am I going to stop participating in the protest or not? And what was problematic was the fact that although I was protesting, I was suspended for literally disrupting an exam. And the university kept emphasizing the fact that although these people were protesting, they actually disrupted. So that was not something my parents were willing to settle on. And my father literally said to me in that lunch, "We have no option but to take you home with us." I said to him, whether you like it or not, that is not going to happen. I've started this and I'm not going to end it. So I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. When this is over and done, we are going to obviously take up the conversation. He was very mad. He was very strict. But for some weird reason, what actually gave him comfort was the fact that we were at a restaurant in Pretoria. And when I was there, I experienced fame for the first time in my entire life. When I was there, people were coming through. They were asking to take pictures. People were busy saying, you're fighting for a just cause. I've also been financially excluded at UNISA. You're doing good. Continue fighting. So the amount of people that came and supported me in that situation, because my father was furious, did not understand that they were actually consoling my dad. So that gave him comfort to say, no, if so many people are actually appreciating your efforts, then surely what you're doing is right. And that was a very tough phase of my life. But at the end of the day, I think the support was quite overwhelming. So that was able to assist me in dealing with my parents. And that was also, able to comfort me as well in that situation. Because I was suspended for 45 days without being charged. I was still being investigated. I was not allowed to be at rest. I was not allowed to be on campus. I could only study online. So you can understand that it was a very difficult phase for me. And after 45 days, the university decided to not charge me, but it was a very tough phase.
No, comrades must be very clear and help us come up with a logical conclusion. When you say you were not allowed to come to race and campus, how were you living? Where were you living? Who helped you? Who assisted you? I think these are some of the things that are missing stories when comrades come and mobilize students to come and protest. What happens when such happens? Where do you go? Because I'm thinking there's someone who comes from Tata and they may find themselves in that situation. Eastern Cape is very far, Chief. For 45 days, it's very far. So when you find yourself in that situation, who gave you shelter?
What comforted me was the fact that when I was informed of my suspension, I had two of my friends who were arrested. And at the time, they had bigger problems than myself. So that comforted me. But what was primary was the fact that the support was so overwhelming. I learned that if you are fighting for a just cause, there's someone out there whom you may not know who is watching and who's going to ensure that you are assisted. We had about 6 people that were arrested in total. Bail for each one of them was about 2,000 rand. And I can assure you, as Treasurer General, we didn't have to pay anything as the SRC. No family member had to contribute towards the bail of all the people that were arrested. We had overwhelming support, so much so that people were saying, look, we are going to be able to assist these people with bail money. In the event that you need lawyers, we will try to give you the best lawyers in the game. So you can be rest assured. When I was suspended, I was housed at a university residence in an illegal manner. I was housed at a university residence by a fellow comrade of mine who said, Mchana, you ought to have a place to sleep, so I will assist. So I was housed. But not only that, the overwhelming support I received from people was immense. There were some who were saying, okay, look, I can try book you a hotel for 3 days. Can I get you an Airbnb? My aunt was saying, you know, I just stay here. You must come stay with me. But at the same time, I didn't go hungry. I didn't go shelterless. The support was immense. That's all I can say.
Now back to Res. Yale has a much younger population as opposed to Junction. Does that make your work easier or tougher? Because I think the older they get, the more problematic they are. In house meetings, I have people mentioning constitutions of structures I've never been into, you know, and at that moment, in the heat of the moment, it sounds like threats. And you have first years looking up to you, Commander, you initiated me. What do you say when this fellow senior says this, you know? So it's a battle of who knows the constitution best and which constitution best and who's been here before who. So does having a much older population make your job easier or tougher?
It makes it extremely tough.
Yes.
It makes it extremely tough. I wish to place it on record, Chair, that when I was elected, the meeting that elected me degenerated into chaos. People physically clarified each other. And as all those things were happening, I understood that here I have a very difficult task because I must be the one at the end of this meeting. I must be the one who bears the responsibility to go to these older people who are physically fighting and say, you know, look, there is life beyond this house meeting. You guys need to forgive each other and understand that post-vets, you will still need each other. And that was very successful. So with old people, you are dealing with a group of people that firstly, they know better. Secondly, they hold views that they are passionate about. They are not willing to listen at all because they firmly believe that they are right. They have big egos. They have seen it all at vets, and they understand how the system works. Unlike young people who, when they are doing something wrong, you can say, but you are doing something wrong. And I need you to understand that I'm just 21 years old. And I constantly
Wait, can you repeat that line? Can you repeat that line? What?
No, I'm very young. I'm 21 years old, and I am constantly dealing with a house that houses over people who are over the age of 25. Some are even 30. And you realize that calling this person to order can't be easy at all because they are extremely old. So you must have a sense of humility when you address the matter that they're involved in. And although it is not easy, it is doable. So to respond to your question, I don't have an easy task at all. I constantly have to make sure that I massage people's egos. I constantly have to make sure that I always make sure that I am the bigger person, you know? Even if whatever it is that this person is fighting me on, everyone in the house understands that this person is being unreasonable. I must always say, okay, look, I've listened to you. I think what you are saying makes sense and we are willing to implement it. And you have to do those things simply because at the end of the day, peace and unity must prevail in the house. I see someone is disputing my age, but I don't know. I'm 21.
I'm still shocked. I'm still shocked. I was listening to Putima Anyele the other day, and she said that leaders know which battles to choose. And you've mentioned quite a lot. You've chosen the battle of reconciliation. You've chosen the battle of mobilizing students for a good cause beyond issues of race and sex. What are some of the battles that you have not chosen? What are some of the battles that you've chosen not to attend to?
I think also as human beings, we need to understand that, of course, when we are listening to problems that are being raised or when we are about to raise problems, we need to understand that we are either dealing with people who are raising problems because they want them to be solved, or we are dealing with people who are raising problems simply because they want to be heard and they just want to make it clear that they are here to cause row and to cause problems. And you've got to understand that the second person that I've mentioned is not willing to find a solution, is not willing to come into an agreement. So you need to understand that as a leader, but also as a human being, you constantly need to make sure that you say to yourself, hi man, what am I doing? The moment you try to be the second person, because as society, we are going through a lot. I always used to say that I get to sit in my office and I get to, listen to people's stories, and I realize that, damn, this is very touching. I have to help students, but at the same time, I have to play the role of counseling students. You listen to someone who's going to be telling you that both their parents were killed in a car accident and they were breadwinners, and since they haven't been able to sustain their life, that person already is dealing with the trauma of losing their parent, and they are equally dealing with a situation of financial exclusion. I remember, our university is not lenient with international students, particularly those who come from Africa. There was a student who had a situation where his father, who was a breadwinner, passed away. And his family struggled immensely with burying his father. They didn't have resources at all. So they had to ask the public to try and assist in ensuring that his father is buried. And this person was now confronted with a situation where they need to pay their fees from last year. So with international students, before they begin with their new academic year, they have to pay 75% of their fees. So he didn't have, firstly, the outstanding amount from the previous year, and he also didn't have the upfront 75%. But at the center of it all, this person had just buried his own father in December. And I was confronted with this situation in January late. And it struck me that, this is a very difficult situation. It's very difficult. And the university does not care. And as an SRC member, you have to assist this student, but the university makes it difficult for you to assist this person. And which is why sometimes when we come up across as radical, as people who are willing to fight the university, people constantly ask us themselves, this 21-year-old, what do they think? Are they crazy? I think what we listen to, what we deal with, what we interact with on a daily basis makes us understand the fact that life is extremely difficult, and the only way we can win some battles is through fighting. And I remember after listening to his case, I said to myself, you know what? In the event that logic advocates for your oppression as a black person, you have no option but to be logical. You get to a meeting with the CFO of the university. He tells you the fact that the university has no money. He tells you about, how the university is struggling financially, and we need students to start paying fees. And logically, accounting-wise, that makes sense. For the university to function, students must pay money. But you realize that this logic actually advocates for my oppression, because I've just lost my father. I couldn't even bury him. I've been passing since I came to Wits. I deserve to be here, but I don't have money, and I must go home on the basis that I don't have money. the same younger siblings who are looking up to me to change their lives, the same mother who's trusting on me to change her life for the better, must be disappointed with the fact that I was excluded from a university. Not because I failed, not because that I committed a crime, not because I was drinking too much alcohol at rest, but simply because I don't have money. That's when you conclude that if logic indeed advocates for my oppression, I have no choice but to be logical. So that's why sometimes, and I really thank our students because they bear with us. We come across as mad, we come across as unreasonable, but that is simply because we are dealing with a lot. And if we are not illogical, we are not going to get work done.
So I was engaging with Orediretsi Masebe. I think he was SRC president 2017-18, right? So, and I realized from that conversation that what I define as trouble as a normal student is very far from what he defines as trouble. I mean, he's seen it all. He's been arrested, been expelled, been suspended. And I wanted to know from you, what was your first trouble like? What secreted the most adrenaline for you as a cadre?
I grew up in a very hostile environment. So the first thing that happened was that my mother used to work for, I don't know if you would know it, but she used to work for a white establishment. And when she was basically not retrenched from work, but fired from work, there was this hatred towards the white establishment that was very prevalent in the house. So my father always wanted to confront any white person that was undermining or disrespecting to him. And because I was growing with him, I really adopted that mentality that no, I must stop thinking that white people are superior, that they're always right, that I must tolerate whatever it is that they do to me, although it's wrong. So when I came here at Wits, the first trouble I encountered was a plagiarism matter. And what made me angry was the fact that firstly, I was first year. I had not plagiarized at all. I had passed. I mean, it was an assignment. I had passed. So what led my lecturer to the conclusion that I have plagiarized was simply because I was not the best student throughout the year, but now I appeared to have the best marks in the class. So I was then redirected to the plagiarisms committee on those bases. And I was worried because there was an element from the university to try and pursue this matter on that basis. And I said to myself, no, this can't be. You are not honestly going to persecute me on the basis that I did better than everyone. Like, it just didn't make sense. And I was not a poorly performing student. It's not like I was failing throughout the whole year and now I had passed. I was fairly within the top 15 of the class, but now I had to be ostracized because of that. So that was the first matter I confronted in the university. It was not easy at all. It was very difficult. But I think there's a guy called Sean Matwana. He's a very troublesome.
Our lawyer.
Yeah, he's our lawyer. He assisted me to confront the establishment. So I really thank him in that regard.
What are some of the challenges that you face? Perhaps now you can direct this in your capacity as an SRC person. What are some of the challenges that you face that students don't know about? You may either face from being in the same boardroom as your Jerome Septembers, your vice chancellors, things that students do not know about, but you face and you perhaps take the fall for everyone. You take one for the team. Are you in the position to disclose that?
I am. I don't mind disclosing the greatest problems that I face. But honestly speaking, in my term of office, my greatest problem was being presented with problems that I could not solve. And the person who was presenting that problem to me had the imagination that I was capable of solving that problem. And that kind of forced me to try and solve that problem. So someone comes to you with a view that, no, this man is the right person to solve my problem. They break down. They tell you they have no hope. You are their last hope. And you realize this person is owing 300,000. This person at some point did not pass, not because they were playful, but because conditions did not allow them to pass. You know, they don't qualify for hardship. It's extremely difficult to get them back. And they also go as far as telling you how many people are actually looking up to them at home and how it is important for them to come back to the system. And you get to realize that this is a very huge burden. I mean, you're 21 years old, you don't even have money. In fact, you are owing airtime advance to Vodacom, and you realize this person wants you to solve their crisis of 300,000. So that was my biggest problem. But I had to make sure that because of the sensitivity of these stories, because of how passionate I am with transforming people's lives or touching them, I had to make sure that these problems are attended to. And these people that are telling you these problems will come back 3 days later expecting to hear feedback from you, not understanding the fact that there are 70 more people who presented you with the same problem, and you have to deal with such issues. That was the greatest problem that I was confronted with. The secondary problem, forget about your personal life. If failed relationships, as soon as you enter into SRC, your partner needs to understand your time with them is going to be charged. Your friends, who are your greatest circle, you don't spend enough time with them anymore. Your family, you hardly call, you go home very, very, very little. I mean, I went home, I remember in December, I went home literally on the 26th of December, and I had to be back on campus on the 2nd of December. And my own father was busy saying, it's December, and you didn't come home for Christmas. You came home for New Year. Literally after New Year's, you're going back to campus. So my personal life basically is not existing at the moment. I was saying it yesterday to my friends that the last time I spoke to my pastor, who played a very critical role in my life, was in February. We used to call each other frequently and speak frequently, but today as it stands, I've lost so many personal relationships. I have to go back to the drawing board and amend them. So you cease to be yourself the day you enter into office. And it's not child's play. It's extremely difficult because after listening to those gigantic problems, imagine going home and you don't have anyone to cuddle. It's very tough. You're going home, you don't have anyone to call. So it's definitely not easy. So I've had to deal with those two problems that were seriously big. And I was once deemed the face of Stingy Man Association. So I was very stingy, but being into SRC has unfortunately forced me to stop being stingy, because you have someone from the Eastern Cape who has been in Johannesburg for the past 3 days. When they tell you the story, you realize this person has not even eaten in the past 3 days. And you have to use the little that you have to say, look, please go buy bread and try and feed yourself, because what you've just told me, I can't not give you food if you have not eaten in the past 3 days, and I'm able to do so. So you get to really, really change. If you are heartless, this space forces you to honestly become the best version of humanity.
At least on the loss of personal relationships, I'm not the only one. That really comforts me. Also, I attended a lecture where student leaders were speaking about how it would be so nice to have the institution to have support systems in place whenever someone enters into office. And I'd like to hear from you. What are some of those for you? What do you wish the institution could take into account when someone enters into office and provide support for them?
I would say counseling. But the truth of the matter is that you don't even have time to go and see a therapist. So I think the mechanisms must be placed before I assume office. I must be mentally prepared for that crisis, because the day I assume office, the work confronting me is demanding. It's a lot. So I think the structures that must actually be in place, the university, at least from my own perspective, the university needs to hire student leaders, a prominent researcher. I think that is of paramount importance, because it cannot be that I sit in the financial committee of the university. I am expected to write proposals. I am expected to study models of Harvard University, incorporate them into the South African version of higher education, and present them to this FinCo to make them believe that indeed financial exclusions are something that are bad for the country. We must not implement them. And I get to say to myself, I must deal with students who have been financially excluded. Last year, there were 8,142 of them. I have to read emails because you are going to have a lot of people sending you emails. I must go and fundraise money for these students. And I'm still expected by the university to be studying models, drafting models. And those are just SRC duties. I'm still expected by my parents to come back home with distinctions because they sent me to this institution to study. I'm still expected by my sisters to ensure that I speak to them on a daily basis. I'm expected by my friends to keep up with them. Maybe at the time I have a girlfriend who's expecting or demanding time from me, and she's justified to do so. So you realize that there's a lot, and you don't have time to be a lily. So honestly speaking, the university needs to get student leaders, a researcher, so as to ensure that we are sharpened in our thinking. But nonetheless, it's extremely tough, but I think that's exactly what's needed.
The first semester has passed, and I would like to know from you, perhaps from the people in your house committee as well as the SRC, are there some principles you've learned from any one of them, and what are they?
I think much more of principles. You learn politics from these people because, hey, you wake up one morning, there's a motion of no confidence here. This one tries to fight back. So there's quite a lot of political squabbles as well that you must manage as well. But in terms of the principles that I've learned, I've honestly learned the fact that, and I say this because our SRC was very divided and fractured prior to the protest. But when it came to the protest, we were all able to put aside our differences and said, no, we need to fight the university on this. So two people who did not see eye to eye throughout our SRC term, when it came to the protest, they said, let's hold hands and let's actually fight the enemy. So you get to learn the impact that comes with teamwork. You get to learn the fact that at some point, your ego is not as big as you think it is. And you equally get to understand the principle of, as a leader, you are not leading yourself, but there are people who are counting on your leadership. So I've quite passionate those principles.
You are quite passionate about issues around res fees, and you have very strong views. And I would like to give you a moment just to engage us, or rather lay it down for us. Maybe we do not understand certain things. Why am I paying 63,000 and why did I have to pay it last year, but I was not here, I was at home? When am I getting my refund? And the refund that I got, why is it not enough to buy me an iPhone 12 or something? Engage me on that, Treasurer.
I think basically every platform I've found myself in, I always speak to this issue because here I am literally staying in a shack. What I'm staying in is a shack. It's just a room with a bathroom, a small kitchen, and a single bed. But Wits demand
a very fancy one.
Rand. Yeah, but Wits University is demanding 80,000 rand from me. Right? I mean, honestly speaking, I have a sister who stays in a small 3-bedroomed house. She does not even pay that much on an annual basis for her bond. I don't understand why res fees are extremely expensive. They are way beyond the market price. If you go today, there's a place called Bridgeview, just across Jorison Street. You go there, you inquire how much a 2-bedroom is. You realize that on a monthly basis, this 2-bedroomed house is not even 5,000 rand. Yet the university is charging someone who's at Nokendo, sharing a bathroom with 16 other people, 6.5. It does not make sense. So res fees are extremely exorbitant. You go to South Point today, the mattress, it's like you are sleeping in jail. The amount of cockroaches that are there, it's shocking. The cleaning services are bad. They provide you, they even slap you with a Wi-Fi of 2 gigs on a monthly basis. They expect you to pay electricity and water in some buildings. Yet at the end of the day, they expect you to pay, at least I've now heard that at their new building you are charged somewhat 7,000 rand. I mean, it cannot be. It's beyond the market price. Res fees are exorbitant. Cartels are taking advantage of the fact that the university is only accrediting a certain group of universities, and they cannot extend that accreditation to private facilities. So they are going to charge us these exorbitant fees. And that is very problematic. It's extremely problematic, and it's a problem that I think we need to arrest as soon as possible. And I think students who normally stay at vet residencies will not acknowledge these problems because they may not be privy to them. If you go to South Point, you're going to realize those conditions are not living conditions at all. They are not living conditions. You have a situation where in one room, which is very small, there are two people in that room. Each one of them, they are expected to pay at least 5.5, given 2 gigs of Wi-Fi. 2 gigs of Wi-Fi does not even last you a week. It doesn't.
True.
And this speaks to the rate of academic exclusion, right? And I did a study, unfortunately, with the previous Prof Adam Habib. I did a study with him, and we actually discovered that students who come as first years to Rest Life, right? Rest Life is obviously every residence which is owned by the university. They have access to unlimited Wi-Fi. They have access to proper study facilities. They don't need to pay for electricity. They don't need to pay for water. Some even go as far as having dining hall. The level of, in terms of percentages, you have first years, 65% of the first years that are admitted into residences by Rest Life are passing with distinctions. 13% are academic. 13% of them are academically excluded. So you are guaranteed that less than 700 first years, less than 700 students, not just first years, are academically excluded from Wits Rest Life. But when you go to South Point, you actually realize that 1 of 4 first years get to pass with 50%. 1 of 4. That's extremely shocking. Out of
wait, Kanakana. I'm experiencing technicalities here. I'm literally on 1%. I'm not understanding why. I think I need to save this. I think we need to cut it here. I am so sorry, but we do need to save this. The gems were dropped here.
Okay, no problem. Thank you so much for inviting me on the platform. We believe that more engagements of this nature are needed. I'm going to leave you so you can say, but thank you for inviting me to this inaugural platform. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time, and to the Housecom and to my Housecom as well. Toodles, let me abruptly leave you like that. Bye.
Bye.